Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Today, I'm joined by Patrick Cummings, a man who has been married for 33 years, has two kids, 23 and 26 years old. So he's got some experience here, men. He is the author of a new book called The Family Business Balancing Act, and he is a wealth management advisor, having spent nearly 2 decades in Northwestern Mutual Wealth Management. He is also the founder of PNP Strategies, which stands for Progress, Not Perfection, where he offers speaking, consulting, and coaching services. I'm excited to get into this conversation today with Patrick about his life and the challenges that he has faced, and also how he's overcome them so that he can give to his family first while continuing to build an epic business that serves the world. Patrick, welcome to the show. So glad to have you.
Hey, John, thanks so much. I'm really looking forward to this.
So first of all, where are you today? You're in your office, it seems. You're in Washington.
I'm in my office in foggy Spokane, Washington. It's very cold, but in Spokane, Washington, getting ready to leave for Mesa, Arizona for the rest of the month.
I have some really good friends that live up near you, and I remember visiting. I was doing a speech in that area, and there was this beautiful river that ran right near his house, and we went out and went on this big hike. And I remember walking away feeling like the piece of Spokane that I loved was the nature. It seemed like it was a really active area. Everybody was on bikes. Everybody was outside. Yeah. Has that also been your experience?
Oh yeah, they have some great biking trails. They have a trail that goes from the falls in Spokane all the way to Coeur d'Alene, right along the river. Lots and lots of mountain biking trails, hiking. Mount Spokane's real close. So if you're into nature, it's a pretty good place.
How do you stay active? How do you break a sweat?
I have an artificial knee and artificial discs in my back. So it's hiking and walking. I do some mountain biking, but not extreme. But that's what I do.
That's great. Patrick, let's launch into this conversation, which really for us has been rooted in exploring your new book, The Family Business Balancing Act. So let's take this all the way back, though, to your experience as a kid. What was your life like? What was your father like? Because I'm imagining there's a lot of seeds for this story that start there.
Yeah. Well, and it's, for a lot of us that are listening to this, we might have a tough time going back and reliving that. I sure did. But so my dad left when I was 5 years old. He was athletic director, basketball coach, track coach. I don't have a lot of memories prior to that with my mom and my dad. But he left when I was 5, my mom's school teacher. And then my brother moved in with my dad when I was 9. And so truly, I lost both of the male figures in my life early on. Began spending time with my dad every other weekend for about a day and a half. And I think as many people back 40 years ago, 50 years ago, I spent a lot of time with my dad at work, and he was a true workaholic. He was raised by a logger after the Depression, and it was men had to provide for their family. And that's what my dad knew. And I think part of the reason that my mom and my dad got divorced was he had the same expectation of my mother is that he saw from his mom. Dinner was on the table, cookies were always made, everything was done at home, as my mom was a, professional in a teaching business. But, many times I remember on the baseball field when I was playing Little League baseball, looking to the bleachers to see if my dad was there. He said he was going to be there. Oftentimes he wasn't. He would apologize for it. And I just began to have that as an expectation as a child that, dad's only going to be there really if he can, and don't expect it.
How did that make you feel? Do you remember the emotions that you had when you looked up into the stands and he wasn't there?
Well, it was sad, but I didn't know much different. I was jealous of the other kids that, their dad was there, or we'd all pile into the back of one of the other kids' dad's pickup, and they would take us down to get ice cream cones and things like that. Yeah, I was certainly sad that he wasn't there, but I didn't know any different. Yeah.
Did you ever reconcile with him or repair or have deep conversations throughout
Oh
the
yeah.
years?
Yeah. It was years and years later. I'm trying to recall the song, The Cat's in the Cradle and the Silver
Yeah.
Spoon, right? That became my life. And I moved away, ended up getting married, having kids, and my dad really wanted to be part of our life. And he retired. But it really wasn't until he was, I would bet into his 70s that, we had some really hard, deep conversations about life, and him asking for forgiveness and me telling him that I forgave him. And I lost him 3 years ago, and even at the end, before he passed away, he would ask me, why did you ever forgive me? And those were wonderful conversations, but really, really difficult conversations. And unfortunately, my brother, who's older than I am, never did forgive him. And I don't know what that's going to be like for him. I can't imagine going through life wishing that I had forgiven my dad. The last 3 years of his life, he was in a care center, and I moved him close to me so that I was within 10, 15 minutes. And I saw him most every day. For sure, the last year of his life, I saw him pretty much every day. But there was a lot of regret. There was a lot of regret on his behalf. And then there was a lot of regret with me because I realized some of the things that I had done to rebel or to play mom against dad. And I didn't know that I was doing it at the time. It wasn't like I'm doing this intentionally, but if you discipline me, I'm not going to come around. And I think that created a lot more problems than it should have. And it's unfortunate. I see a lot of parents who are divorced. It's unfortunate. 50% of the population ends up that way. And how many times do you see parents playing one versus the other, or kids playing one versus the other? The Disneyland dad, or, why did my brother resent me so much? Still to this day, because I never got disciplined. My dad was afraid, I'm sure, that I just wouldn't come around, and I probably wouldn't have. I didn't care for my stepmom much because she tried to be my mom. That was just a really tough time. But yeah, I mean, we made amends at the end, and he knew that I loved him dearly, and I know he loved me dearly.
When he was asking for forgiveness, or maybe when he was apologizing, maybe not even asking for forgiveness, but what was he apologizing for? What was he sad about? What did he regret in his life?
I think it was the time that he wouldn't take with us. And realize.
Did he talk about why?
It was.
Did he come to an awareness of why he wasn't spending time?
He thought the best thing for him to do was to provide. Yeah. And in provide, he thought it was financially. Yeah. And trying to make up for not being there. I mean, as an educator, you don't make a lot of money, right? And my mom didn't make much money. My dad didn't make a lot of money. So he would take on extra jobs to try and make more, to provide more. And I don't ever recall my brother and I asking for more as far as money, right? We wanted more time with him. I mean, there was, as an example, there was a time, and for some reason, my dad always would find other people who had a need, and he would help take care of that need, and we would go help him take care of that need. But as an example, hunting season was coming. My brother and I both loved to hunt, and we couldn't sleep. It was, this is one of the first years that I was going to get to hunt because I finally passed firearm safety. And we got up that morning to go, and we're like, where are we going? And he said, well, we have to go pick up Mike. And I said, what? Yeah, we need to go pick up Mike because he needs some time with an adult man. And so here my brother and I were, really looking forward to spending this day with my dad. And yet he went out and got this other young man to come along with us, and it just ruined it. It just ruined it. And I think there were times that he recognized that he did that. I mean, he had plaques all over his wall about what he had done for the kids. One gentleman gave him a custom made fishing rod that said, "Thanks for all you did for the kids." And it wasn't about my brother and I. It was about all the kids that he touched as an athletic director, doing state basketball championships and all those things. And it was those things that he would apologize for, that, he would say, "I didn't take the time to do the things, with you and your brother that I should have. I spent all that time doing all the work." And I think it was for praise. I think my dad did those things so that he got the outside praise, because my brother and I weren't probably giving him any praise. We just wanted to be with him. So yeah, he was it was a very sad end to his life when he was pleading that my brother would forgive him. And I remember calling my brother and saying, "Hey, we sound almost alike on the phone. Would it be okay if I called Dad, said I was you, and told him I forgave you?" And my brother said no. But there was a lot of deep regret that my dad had. He was married three times. And I think he was married three times, all for the same reason, is he would find somebody else that needed help and spend that time, his emotional time, trying to care for them. And whether it's a physical relationship or not, didn't matter. It was that he was taking the energy, the little bit of energy that he had left at the end of the day, and giving that to somebody else.
What had to shift within you, Patrick, in order for you to forgive him, to accept him, to let it go?
Well, I always wanted a relationship with him. I mean, that was deep down. I always did. You're going to make me tear up here. But there was always that goal of having that relationship. And then when I moved away and didn't see him at all, and him asking for time, that really gnawed at me the whole time. And I wanted my kids to have a relationship with their grandpa. And I wanted them to know who he was, and he wasn't working anymore. And so I think it was when I had children that were, beginning to ride bicycles and, first time to go out fishing and things like that, was when I really wanted to make it better. That was the big shift. And then, in my life, my wife and I almost divorced probably 14 years ago, something like that. And it wasn't that we fought. It's that we did not agree on how to discipline our kids. She was raised in an absolute disciplinarian family where, children are to be seen and not heard, and preferably not seen. And in my family, it wasn't that way at all. My mom was very loving and compassionate, and, lots of stuff going on. And, if you were grounded, you're grounded for a very short period of time in her world. And it was harsh. And so we just clashed over that. And I began coming home from work. I was working for a different investment company at the time. And I would come home from work and I felt like I was a referee. And I would come in the house and there was fighting and bickering, and she would want me to support her and the kids would want me to support them. And I got to the point where one day I had it. I had just had it. And work wasn't going well. And I walked out and slammed the door, like dang near broke the door off the hinges. I was upset. And as I drove away, I broke down and started crying that I don't want to act this way. Right? I don't want to act this way. And I hung something on my garage door opener that said, "Pray before entering." And every day when I pull up to my garage and I'd have to touch my garage door opener, here's this thing hanging in front of me, "Pray before entering." And I would pray that I would act in a professional, in a good, and a caring manner That didn't solve the problem with my wife and I. She was working as a veterinarian, or she's still a veterinarian, but she was working out of town on weekends. And so she would leave either Friday night or Saturday morning and work 24-hour shifts until Sunday night or Monday. And then she would come home typically on Monday. And this one particular weekend she was leaving, we would just pass each other in the halls. It was like having a roommate, right? You slept in the same bed, but there might as well just have been a divider. It was pretty cold, and she left this particular weekend. And I knew in my mind, if she came home, she was going to say, I don't want to do this anymore. And I had made the answer in my mind that I don't either. I'm taking the kids, and you can have the house, retirement accounts, everything. And as I thought through that, I thought, I'm doing the same thing that my parents did. Right. And my pastor called me and said,
which was what, when you say the same thing, what?
Just give up.
Oh, just give up. Yeah.
It's easy. Just give up.
Yeah.
Easier to just give up, pack up, walk away than it was to face the problem. And my wife is very much an introvert. And she's only read the first 3 chapters of the book, put it down, said, I can't read anymore because you're too real in here. That was the point. But she called our pastor and said, we need help. And he called me and said, I want you in my office tomorrow. And of course I went in, and he was asking me if I was having an affair, if there's anything going on. And I wasn't. And I told him I didn't want to go down the same path as my parents had. And my wife's parents divorced when she was sophomore in high school. And it was at that point in time I said, I am not leaving. If you decide to leave, that's your choice. I'm not leaving. I'll do everything I can to make this work, because I don't want to have this generational sin continue. And I want to show our kids that you can work through relationships and have a positive outcome. And let me tell you, John, that was tough, because we loved each other, but we didn't like each other. And we made a commitment that we were going to go on a date every week. And it's on my calendar from now until eternity, Thursday lunch with Brooke, my wife, and no phones allowed. And we've been doing that now for probably 12 years. And if we can't make Thursday noon work, we do not cancel and wait till the next week. It's Thursday night we go to dinner, or it's Friday at lunch. We make it where it has to happen that week. And it's just expected. And we look forward to it. We always eat together. She gets home late 2 nights a week. I make dinner, but making that commitment that I never saw my dad make. I never saw him make that. Right. And that's what really changed it for me to do things different.
Thank you, Patrick. Let's start with that for being so open. I really appreciate these stories that you're sharing, because I can relate to a lot of it. In particular, I want to share that this, I'm not leaving. So I think it's well known that I've been doing this podcast for years, and I've talked about my relationship with my wife. It's by far the most challenging thing in my world. Like business, no problem. Kids, no problem. Like all that feels like run an ultra marathon. I got you, right? But when it comes to marriage, that to me has been the most challenging part of my life. I think that's by the way, not a poke at Tatiana, my wife. That is a lot to do with me. That is, she brought to me the greatest opportunities for me to grow as a man, and I couldn't run away. It felt like I had to address them.
Right.
Interestingly, one of the things that is very recent for me is that, so let me back up for a minute. For years, I thought the answer was always talk more, right? Like talk it out, reveal yourself, ask the right questions. Everything was about communication strategies with my wife. And I was like, how do I communicate better? How do I say it so it'll land? How do I ask it and remain open? But it was always about how she expressed herself and how I express myself. And interestingly, what's been working lately has been, and I laugh a little bit as I say this, is not talking. Now this is gonna fire some people up, right? Because they're like, no, this is a topic that people could be very opinionated about. I get it. And I'm not saying I'm right. I'm saying this is what's happening for me right now, which is that I don't think we should always say everything on our mind. I don't think we should process everything outwardly in our relationship. I don't think that that's the duty of the relationship, is to hold all of your trauma, all of your needs, all of your desires, all of your expressions all the time, and sometimes all at once.
Right.
I think that some of the best advice I've received, some of the best practices that I have are, if I'm feeling triggered, that it's how do I process something on my own before I bring it to the relationship, before I go sit at that lunch and reveal. And I'm not saying I don't talk at all in the relationship, or I don't express myself or open up or ask questions, or of course I do, but it's tempered a little bit in this last, several months for me. I've been playing with the idea of processing myself, processing with other men, processing in my community that I trust. And even that's at an appropriate level of communication. But the reason that I wanted to say this was that it's this idea of, I'm not leaving, but but sometimes, like, the key to when I heard that, I was like, sometimes the key is like, don't quit, just stay, but also you don't have to fix everything immediately. So my point is that for me, it wasn't like I'm either going to fix this problem or I'm out of here. It was like, my answer was, I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm also not going to feel like I have to fix this problem in the next 30 days. I'm going to not put a strain on the relationship, because sometimes it's about just kind of surviving bad weather.
Yep.
That's it. The storm is here.
Right.
Things are off. That's a season. Everything's a season when you're a dad, because the kids are going to change, different ages, different stages. Everything's a season.
Yeah. Yep. And if you have daughters, there's going to be a day or a year, a week, not a year, where all of a sudden it's like, where did my daughter go? And who are you? Like, that happens, right?
Yeah.
But, to that point,
I think that's all kids, by the way.
Well, it is. I only know my two kids, and
that's right.
one was more challenging than the other for different reasons. But, back to your point of that is, we're also married to people who are different than us. And one of the things that I really tried to help my wife understand is that the way she wants things done is perfection, which is kind of funny, because I always ask her, why did you marry me? Because I'm a B. If you're going to give me a letter grade, I'm a B. But the thing that trying to get to understand is that she communicates different than I do. And it's not right and wrong. We think differently. And when my wife gets upset, you can read it like a book, right? Like, that's part of having a long relationship is you can see and understand. And
how does it show up, by the way? Let's get specific here. Like, how do you know she's upset?
We don't talk. Like, she doesn't talk at all for 3 days.
Goes quiet.
3 days. Don't touch me. Don't look at me. She's just mad, right? And you can just tell. And so I know that I have to give her a day or two to start processing it, and then, still be there, not being a jerk. I'm not trying to, get her mad, but then eventually saying, when you get to a point where we can have a talk, let me know.
Yeah.
And it used to be she would write it down, and give it to me. And man, I'm telling you, that was like a knife, because just like in social media, people don't have much, the filters are pretty thin if they're there at all. Well, when she would write stuff down, there was no filter. It was just stab you. And we don't do that anymore. But just making sure that she understands, hey, I'm here when you're ready. I want to talk through it. And I'm not saying I'm right and you're wrong. But as an example, we are going to Wisconsin to one of the races. We're going to go see the IndyCar races. That's where our son works in that world in June. And there was something that happened with the scheduling of vacation rental that we did. And she had made a mistake and she was really upset. It's going to cost us, fair bit of money because we can't get out of it. And she was beating herself up because she didn't understand the communications back and forth from the other people. And I said, it's okay. Like, it's okay. If it costs us an extra $1,000, it's not the end of the world. And she will go through methodically and make a list of every property and everything that's different. To me, if it's a safe place and it's decent, let's go. I don't have to go through that. That's her process. Well, she got really upset because she gave me a list of 10 and said, pick. And I said, how do I pick? I don't know how to pick, because all of these will be fine with me. And she got really upset, started crying because of all the time she had spent. And I had to take a step back and say, look, I understand how much time you've taken on this and how important it is. These are the priorities that I would like to have. I'd like to have a king size bed. And I went through a couple of things on my list, and we took the 10, knocked it down to 3. One of them had 2 bicycles and a kayak that were in the garage that we could use. And I said, that's it for me. But if you want the other 2, that's fine with me. We process differently. And sure. I think in a relationship, we need to accept the fact that we just process things different. And a lot of times she doesn't accept the way I process, but at least we're to a point now, 33 years later, that she can recognize that.
Yeah. And, I hear that story of like, I put these 10 together and I want you to pick, as, what I hear is we want people in our lives to help us make decisions to feel confident and safe. Right. And it's like, we lean into other people for the things that we need. And I could hear the need for her is like this, like, show me the direction. Right. Yeah. I did this work. Show me the direction.
Yeah.
I feel that. Patrick, let's just maybe pivot and maybe not pivot. Maybe this is in direct alignment with where we are, but I want to talk about the book for a second, the Family Business Balancing Act.
Sure.
And now that that's out there, and when you and I were chatting earlier, we were talking about feedback from people that you're getting, right? People that are reading the book and telling you what they think. Mm-hmm. What have they talked about in the book? What story, what concept, if you will, what chapter are they resonating with that we might not have talked about already on the show?
I think instead of a specific chapter or a specific section of the book, the things they've said to me is that, wow, you really were vulnerable in writing this book. Why were you so vulnerable? And I want to be vulnerable to share with other men that it's okay to be vulnerable. And as long as it's in a safe environment, right? You don't want to go be vulnerable with somebody that's going to take whatever you're trying to share. Maybe it's a deep, dark secret that you need to get out. But I think the vulnerability part of it, I've had a couple of people who are married who were the Disney dad. And one of those individuals' daughters ended up in the gutter in a city, OD'd on heroin, and his best friend went and picked her up and took her to a rehab facility. And he said to me, he wished he'd have done things different. Wish that he would have read the book when he was in his 20s, and he bought the book for his 4 kids. But the vulnerability part, and I'm not expecting my best friends to be as vulnerable as I was in the book. And my wife asked me why. Part of it is healing for me. There's things that I talk about in there that I'm not proud of. My son almost took his own life. Why was that? What could we have done different? And if I can help save a marriage through just a few things in here and save a kid's life, that's my goal. And what people are telling me is that it's let them see that it's okay to, number one, not be perfect, because we can't be, but it's okay to talk to other people about our weaknesses. Mm-hmm. And men aren't very good at that. And that's probably the biggest resounding message that I've heard people say to me from the book in general. The part of my wife and I almost getting divorced, and the part of my son almost taking his life, was parts of the book that people have brought up the most. I had to be really careful because I didn't want my son to read the book and think it was his fault, because it absolutely wasn't. We didn't know he had a hearing deficit, auditory processing disorder, until he was in 9th grade, which is a pretty challenging time in a teenager's life. And we were being really hard on him with school and, progress and that kind of stuff with his schoolwork. And he just felt that he couldn't do anything right. And I wrote him a letter. It's part of in the book. I wrote him a letter about all the things that I saw in him that I appreciated, that were unique. And he said that he keeps that letter even to today in a lockbox, and that's what kept him from taking his life.
Whoa. Did your son read the book?
Yeah.
And what did he think about you sharing that story and how you told it?
Because I prefaced it with him, or I talked to him first, him understanding that I was taking it on me for the reasoning, he felt bad in that he apologized to me. And I said, you don't need to be apologizing to me. It's your mom and I that we drove you to that point, right? It wasn't that you're a failure. If I had not talked to him about that, I think it would have been taken pretty bad. My daughter didn't know that story. And she said, oh, I can exactly see where that came from. So probably should have talked to her about it too before she read the book.
Did you see it coming before he attempted to take his life?
No. I mean, we saw a lot of, there was a lot of headbutting, right? Teenager not getting along, rebelling against us. We thought he was doing drugs. We accused him of doing drugs. He went to their local pharmacy and said, hey, I'm willing to buy a drug test if you want me to take a drug test. And he was just to the point of, he didn't know what to do. Part of this auditory processing thing is what he heard was not what was said. And so the challenge of that, and us not understanding that, is what pushed him to that. And, we knew he was angry, and we would take him to skate parks and, go out on his bike or his motorcycle to kind of vent, but he never expressed anything. And he didn't get to the point where he attempted it and failed. He got to the point where he was thinking about taking his life. And it was a God thing that I wrote that letter to him.
Mm. So he was thinking about it, and then the letter showed up, and that interfered with his thought process. It changed his mind.
Yeah.
Does he talk about to you now what he wishes you would have done differently? Does he ever say, this is what you could have done? Because obviously you wrote the letter. That's a wonderful part of the story. Does he ever hey, Dad, I wish that you would have pushed harder, asked me more, done this to support me prior?
No, I think there's a level of frustration with him still to this day where the school, we were asked to have his hearing tested, kindergarten, second grade, fourth grade. Every other year they were telling us there was something the matter with his hearing, and we would take him in and get his hearing tested. And we did all these different things. And I think the accusations that he was doing drugs or doing something wrong, there's still a wound there. But I will tell you what he does do is he said, Dad, stop beating yourself up. We're okay. I'm okay. He said, I hated you up until I was about 20 years old. But he said, now I understand that you were doing it out of caring, not to be mean.
Does he talk about what changed? Sorry to interrupt.
Well, when we found out he had the auditory hearing problem, we really went to work on trying to help modify his school life, his work life, he was working for a farmer, and talking with them and having open conversations that, look, this isn't a disability that you needed to be treated in a special way. People need to make concessions, and that was different. And he graduated from an alternative high school. So we got him into an alternative high school that had much smaller class sizes that worked for him. And then spending the extra time to help him navigate his schoolwork. That was different. And then when he went off to go to college, initially he was going to go into mechanical engineering. He's a brilliant kid, but that just didn't work. Traditional school didn't work for him. And so I literally spent hours researching. He loves anything with wheels and a motor. So I was researching all of these different tech schools about, automotive programs or motorcycle programs. And I found a school in Ohio, University of Northwestern Ohio, that had a specialty program in high performance motorsports, high performance automotive. And it was a 3-year school, year round. And I thought, this is legit. So I spent a tremendous amount of time behind the scenes talking to program administrators, talking to the faculty about the fact that my son has this auditory processing thing. And so he dropped out of the traditional school, and we didn't beat him up over that, right? We paid the tuition and said, it's a learning, let's go to this next thing. And he enrolled in this school back in Ohio. And I knew, going from the Pacific Northwest to Ohio, if I took him there to visit, he was like, no way, I'm not going to move back to the upper Midwest. So I took him there and dropped him off. And the first 4 months, he hated me because he would ask me to buy him an airline ticket to come home. He wanted to leave. It wasn't about the school. He just, didn't have any friends and all these different things. And he became up top of the dean's list. And once he developed that connection, and he just says to me now, Dad, thanks for pushing me in the direction that you knew I needed to go for me, even though I was pushing back, and, kind of keeping me and supporting me in the process. So that was really the change. And our relationship became so much better. We'd go back and visit him. And it was an amazing school for somebody who wants to get in automotive racing or just high performance automotive. And once he found his niche, oh my goodness, he's a totally different person.
Yeah. So cool.
Yeah.
Patrick, I love that the theme of this has just been about, to me, this has been about forgiveness in many ways, and reconciliation. And, when you think about balancing, a lot of it is about correction. It's about regaining center. It's about course correction. That's what balance is. It's like, I'm falling and I get back on track. And so much of marriage and parenting and relationships are about these wounds and how we heal from them and how we recenter, how we repair.
Yeah.
My last question, because I feel like I want to ask this, I need to ask this to complete what I feel is this like this total story here. And that is, was there anything that you wanted to apologize to your dad for? Was there any feelings of guilt for you that you wanted his forgiveness with?
Yeah, I think it was when I said earlier, my rebelling against, the fact that he was living in a different town. And there were times I was probably a little, I'll just beep, I was a little beep.
Yeah.
Because I think he knew that if he did discipline me, I wouldn't come back and see him.
Mm.
And I did ask for forgiveness during that period of time. There was a period of time, and I don't remember if I was 12, 13, 14 years old, where I did not speak to him for 2 to 3 months. And he was trying. And I wish I could remember what it was that triggered this, and I honestly think it was my stepmom was disciplining me for something, and my dad wasn't even around. And I just said, I'm done. I don't want to, I don't want to be involved in this other family. And I actually ran away for a period of time. I was gone for, I think, 2 or 3 days. Neither my mom nor my dad knew where I was. And I was just hanging out with another friend, but I apologize for that period of time. But that was the only thing that I have regrets for. And, in the book, we all have a regret somewhere for something we did. I want to leave without any regrets from today moving forward. If I can change something today or tomorrow and not have a regret about it, that's what I want. And I've had some folks who their children are grown. And I just asked them, do you want your children's children to go through the same thing? How can you help them be better? And yeah, so, and my dad was like, it was no big deal to him, the fact that I had kind of rebelled. He was like, yeah, of course I forgive you. Why are you asking me to forgive you when I was the one that caused the problem? Mm-hmm. So.
Patrick, is there anything else that you want to share with the Front Row Dad community that we didn't get
to? To the name of my other company, PNP Strategies, progress, not perfection. You don't have to get it perfect to be a better dad or a better husband or a better partner. You can make positive steps. This lunch every Thursday with my wife, in the beginning, man, it was a challenge to do that. Now it's just expected. Everybody on my team, everybody knows. If you're not spending time with your family at dinner at all until the weekend, maybe one night you make that change. Maybe it is put your wife or your spouse or your partner on the calendar maybe once a month and just start that to make some progress. And step by step, we're all going to get through this. We're going to do better as long as those steps are in a positive direction.
Yeah. Solid counsel. Gentlemen, thanks for listening today. Check out the book, The Family Business Balancing Act. And Patrick, if people want to connect with you further, where would they go?
They go to pnpstrategies.com, or they can send me an email, pnpstrategies@outlook.com.
Patrick, thanks so much, man, for opening up and being so real with us today. I really appreciated the conversation from that perspective. And it gets me thinking about the repairs that might need to still occur in my life with people that I love. And so I believe that that'll happen as a result of this. You brought an awareness to repair and forgiveness. And to me, that's the core essence of rebalancing with anybody that's important in your life. So thanks again for being here today. Guys, check out Patrick's new book. We'll link to that in the show notes, The Family Business Balancing Act. And Patrick, Happy New Year, my friend.
Thanks. Appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.